morning. I'm Matt Gallen, Town Manager, Town of South Windsor, and also current President of CCM. And I want to thank you for allowing us to come here to this hearing to discuss some of the concerns that we have as municipal governments as we move forward in the budget. We represent over 95% of Connecticut's population, 154 towns, and as you know, we are the first providers of services to our community: police, fire, ambulance, roads, bridges, everything. We do it all. Let me begin by saying thank you to the committee. In this current budget, we've kept a keen eye on the interest of residential business property taxpayers by not balancing the state budget on their backs. Your commitment has helped municipalities maintain needed services, reduce employee layoffs, and defer property tax increases. Towns and cities in the state are not out of the woods yet, though, of course. In HB 6824, though, as we said, we do appreciate the governor, and we hope that the state legislature will also keep this pledge and not to balance the budget on the backs of the municipalities and our taxpayers. There are some concerns, though, even in this budget as we move forward, and that we need to bring out to the attention of the state legislature. Requiring towns to pay 100% of resident state trooper costs, requiring full-day kindergarten, although some have done full-time kindergarten. There are communities that just can't do it all in 1 year. We hope that we'll be able to do that over a period of time. Eliminating the public housing pilot and tax abatement program, cutting priority school funding, increasing the solid waste disposal fee, sweeping local funds collected from land recording fees, and cutting urban action funding in half, among other things. We get here because towns, the only tax that we can ever do is property tax. 71% of our budgets throughout the state of Connecticut, those are all due to property tax. We can't do any other type of taxation because that's all done by state statute. So therefore, what does the property tax? As we know, there was a tax incident study that was just put out by the Department of Revenue. They tell you again that property tax is the most burdensome tax on our taxpayers in the state of Connecticut. It's the biggest share of local tax. It's regressive income because it's blind to profit, blind to people who may have lost their jobs. So that's an issue. The property and income wealth vary from town to town in Connecticut. Connecticut is more dependent on it than any other state. The biggest business tax, and of course, it is the primary funder for pre-K and education.
We're a city of 125,000. We're a metro region of over 1 million. But almost 52% of our grand list is tax exempt, which means that residents who have a median income of about $30,000 face an incredible burden to be able to face their daily needs. When you take out what we need to put into the budget as a result of legislative mandates, minimum funding that we're required to submit to a board of education, and that's about more than half of our budget. When we take out public safety, which is so vital and important, not just to only protect the infrastructure of the city, but also we lend help to our surrounding towns, and we have to protect the work environment for not only our 60,000 community visitors, but also the 6 million visitors that we also get a year that support the state's economy, again, by admission taxes, by sales taxes, by employment taxes. There is a real benefit to what is going on in the city of Hartford to be able to nurture and have this great partnership between the state, and the state is a partner.
Period of time that you think would be fair to give districts to get there. And I know we're putting out money to pay for any classroom renovations.
So I would say for the smaller towns that are, South Windsor, we do have full-time kindergarten. We did it last year. And of course, it took us 3 or 4 years to kind of ease our community into the cost of that program. The superintendent had time to massage their budget in other areas to get it there. So that was about a 2 or 3 year period of a year. So I would say between a 2 or 3 year would be an appropriate period of time, that if they knew they had that time, then you know to plan, what do I look at my budget, what programs we really don't need anymore, look at the mandates and figure out how you do it. So that's what I would recommend.
Yeah. Anything in those recommendations, either of you, that would potentially lead to any appreciable savings in the first or second year of this upcoming budget?
Well, I think, the more commission those individuals work very hard over a long period of time, and I think I'll probably let John Assessor serve in that commission, answer those questions or whatever. But I would tell you that there is some savings. I mean, one of the things that the Moore Commission, which was supposed to look at, was the tax increment study when it came out. Now that just came out. And what we're doing now is we're floating SB 1 to change the whole tax structure without even looking at that study, having that commission look at it. And I think there is some very substantial savings by just looking at that study alone, having the commission go back and look at that study. There are regional things that we do all the time. In South Windsor, we have a regional dog facility that has Manchester, East Hartford, and us, a regional approach. Instead of spending, each one spending $2 or $3 million with a half a million dollars, a huge savings for all of us. And a firehouse that we have. We have regional approaches to snow removal, sharing of equipment. Again, East Hartford, Manchester, and South Windsor got together. So we've been doing this a long time. And I think the Moore Commission was a good commission to sit there. But I think also what has to happen is that we have to look inward to the state a little bit as well. As you heard, we sit and even South Windsor, we've negotiated a lot of things going on. 401s, high deductible plans. No, I mean, we really have reduced costs. My OPED is $100,000 a year budget. That's it. Where other communities look at $7 million, $15 million, $16 million, right? But I think also the state has to look within themselves. What are you going to do? Is having a person who has a pension that goes out at $100,000 a year with a base pay of $60,000, is that sustainable anymore? And I feel for when you say you're cutting the social service aspects, but those things are really important to our communities, because if you cut them, they're coming to us. They're going to come back to us for help. So I think what you need to do as a state legislature is look at those areas. The things that we're doing locally with our unions, you need to do with yours. Be partnered with the state legislature and say, how do we come up with a fair way to fund education? And it's not just seniors, too. We have a lot of young families trying to survive in South
We
Windsor.
believe the towns are partners in government, and that means that we, while not thrilled, are understanding that another year of flat growth, flat funding is probably essential to the state of Connecticut. We hope that as you go through your deliberations, you'll be able to maintain that. To also look in the mirror a little bit, to realize that we are striving every year to be partners, to have efficient and effective government, and we need that same part on your side. And we understand that that's more difficult in a larger system. But we're doing it at the local level, and you can maybe learn from us. Instead of just examining how we should become more efficient, a little bit of looking to see how maybe you can learn from us through the Moore Commission on how you can take back some of the lessons learned and apply it. We've worked with our unions time and time again to come up with solutions. Connecticut should begin a long-term plan on how we're going to fund education, and Matt Galligan is absolutely right. I think it has to be respective of income and not just property taxes. We need to stop treating the illness of property tax, the symptom of property tax, by picking one off at a time. We're going to take away the boats, the airplanes, the semi-trailers. Now we're going to look at car taxes. Let's look at the illness, the full illness of it. The state budget cuts is actually a reduction in the Nutmeg network costs. They're taking away free internet access for schools and libraries in the proposed budget. But it goes much deeper than just internet access. They've actually cut the lease to the fiber optic lines to fiber tech, which would put the state in jeopardy of a breach of contract. It was a 20-year contract with fiber tech. But also, the state was able to, and I commend them, get a $183 million VTOP grant to run that fiber network. And those federal funds required that network be maintained. So I can see the federal government asking for that money back. But it also is part of the public safety data network.
Successful example of regional partnership with the state, and that's the Resident State Trooper program. The governor's budget is based on a savings of $4.6 million, and honestly, I really have to question that savings, because in my area of the state, where many of the Resident State Trooper program towns are, we are already beginning to have discussions of regionalizing a police force. Touch on a program that has been a successful example of regional partnership with the state, and that's the Resident State Trooper program. The governor's budget is based on a savings of $4.6 million, and honestly, I really have to question that savings, because in my area of the state, where many of the resident state trooper program towns are, we are already beginning to have discussions of regionalizing a police force. Prevailing wage is another area that I want to talk about. I have to thank the Labor Committee for putting out and sending something out on prevailing wage. I am so pleased that we have taken that step. I remember when we couldn't even get a hearing here in Hartford, and we've got a hearing, we've had a second hearing, we had another hearing, and now something is coming out of labor. Thank you very much. I hope that you all can come up with some solution to the prevailing wage. And as one of, I think it was Matt Gallagher made the comment, and it was in Forbes magazine, that prevailing wage has a 28% impact on the jobs. And we have a lot of local contractors in our area who will not bid on the job because of the amount of paperwork, and it is just too complicated a system. And prevailing wage has hurt the communities. And I would venture, and I've done some research in the past, I can't tell you the number, but I would bet you that even with the new thresholds, I would say in the high 90s to 100% of the jobs that come out of the state will not be impacted. Because let's face it, you don't have very many renovation projects in the state that are going to go below $1 million. Legal notices, I really appreciate the work that's being done on the legal notices. I've been very vocal about that. I know that there's a proposal that we have allowed to just put a summary in the newspaper, and that's really appreciated. That's what we're asking for. We would like to see the opportunity to be able to post the text of what we're summarizing on our local websites, but honestly, I'm okay with it being on the newspaper website, because my understanding is the proposal is that it would be free. The only thing I would ask and urge you all to do is just get some language ensuring that going out into the future that remains free. Because where we might find ourselves in the future, if that language is not available, is we suddenly will then begin to see costs coming in for us posting it on the newspaper's website. So that's what we would urge you all to do. The 2/3 approval of unfunded mandates, that's been something I've served on the Moore Commission since its inception. And I was on the regionalization and the mandate relief, and I know that the 2/3 came out of the Moore Commission, that initiative. It was probably brought up and talked about many years before that, but I do know that we had a major discussion about it. And I would urge you all to, really seriously consider the 2/3 before mandates are put onto communities, because we understand that mandates are important, and let's be real. Just about every bill that you pass here in Hartford is some mandate, one way or the other. But some of them are critical and important to our residents, and we support those. But some of them are just, they can become costly. And we would just ask that you consider
on the MS4 permit, which to a lot of our thinking is the unfunded mandate elephant in the room, so to speak. One of the additional requirements that is part of this bill, it takes 49 towns in non-urbanized areas and classifies them as Tier 2 towns and saddles them with reporting requirements, plan development, public education. The EPA, in no way, shape, or form, in its pass-through to the state of Connecticut, considers towns in non-urbanized areas to be required to do any of this. It's, to my way of thinking, piling on. I think what Cost would ask is simply that you look at this and do whatever is in your power to limit DEEP in terms of its capacity to pass along requirements with the state MS4 permit, which are not stipulated in the federal EPA regulations.